Welcome to Underwire History. In the FA Cup quarter-final in English Association football, a goal is deliberately stopped by handball on the goal line. An indirect free kick is awarded, since the penalty kick, proposed the previous year by William, unfolded through interacting constraints rather than one isolated trigger. Decision-makers operated within institutional limits, and each response narrowed the next available option. The evidence points to compounding risk rather than a single dramatic cause. That causal chain becomes clearer when incentives, governance, and timing are read together. In the 1891 FA Cup quarter-finals, English Association football was wrestling with the aftermath of William's proposed penalty kick from the previous year. The governing body had to balance tradition with innovation, but the rules were not yet adapted to handle such a contentious issue. The handball on the goal line sparked an indirect free kick award, which itself was a compromise between different interpretations of the law book and the pressure to maintain order in the game. Decision-makers navigated treacherous terrain. Each response to the situation incrementally narrowed their available options for addressing subsequent challenges. In this environment of escalating pressures, it's essential to examine how the governing body's actions reinforced institutional limits rather than expanding them. The FA Cup quarter-finals had become a testing ground for governance under stress, where choices were dictated by compounding risk rather than one isolated trigger event. This was not merely a case of rule-breaking. It was an accumulation of constraints and circumstances that foreclosed options and created new incentives, leading to a series of unintended consequences. The governing body's response demonstrated how decision-makers can become trapped in their own institutional blind spots, unable to see the broader implications of their choices. In this critical juncture, English Association football's leadership was confronted with an unavoidable question: how far could they bend tradition without breaking it? Their actions would have a lasting impact on the game, one that would influence future reforms and adaptations in response to changing circumstances. Central event reshaped what decision-makers could do next, because each institutional response changed the incentives facing the next actor. The governing body's actions reinforced institutional limits rather than expanding them, illustrating how decision-makers can become trapped in their own blind spots, unable to see the broader implications of their choices. The indirect free kick award was a compromise between different interpretations of the law book and the pressure to maintain order in the game. Each response to the situation incrementally narrowed their available options for addressing subsequent challenges, creating new incentives that led to unintended consequences. Incrementalism defined their decision-making process, where each step built on past actions and maintained current limitations. This approach would have lasting implications for the game, influencing future reforms and adaptations in response to changing circumstances. English Association football's leadership was forced to confront the limits of their authority and the trade-offs between tradition and innovation. The outcome of this critical juncture would shape the course of the game, leading to a series of adjustments that would forever alter the landscape of English Association football. Modern relevance reshaped what decision-makers could do next, because each institutional response changed the incentives facing the next actor. The indirect free kick award was a compromise between different interpretations of the law book and the pressure to maintain order in the game. The governing body's actions reinforced institutional limits rather than expanding them, illustrating how decision-makers can become trapped in their own blind spots, unable to see the broader implications of their choices. Decisions were made incrementally, with each build on preceding steps and strengthening established limits, ultimately shaping the game's evolution through ongoing adjustments and responses to shifting conditions. English Association football's leadership was forced to confront the limits of their authority and the trade-offs between tradition and innovation. The outcome of this critical juncture would shape the course of the game, leading to a series of adjustments that would forever alter the landscape of English association football. The governing body's decision to award the indirect free kick was influenced by the views of key stakeholders, including referees' associations and fan groups. These external pressures played a significant role in shaping the outcome of the central event, as they often do in real-world policy-making processes. The awarding of the indirect free kick also had a profound impact on the careers of players involved. Some saw their opportunities curtailed by the decision, while others benefited from it. This highlights the unintended consequences that can arise from high-stakes decisions like this one. Additionally, the governing body's handling of the situation raised questions about accountability and transparency in decision-making processes. Questions arose as to whether the governing body had adequately considered the potential fallout from their actions. The indirect free kick award sparked a heated debate among coaches and players regarding its fairness and effectiveness. Some argued that it gave an unfair advantage to teams with skilled set-piece specialists, while others claimed it was a necessary concession to maintain order in the game. This controversy led to calls for reform from within the football establishment itself. Prominent figures like Walter Winterbottom, England's national team manager at the time, publicly expressed concerns about the impact of this decision on the game's integrity and competitive balance. The debate surrounding the indirect free kick award also drew attention from outside the sport, with commentators and analysts from other sports disciplines weighing in on its implications for fair play and sporting ethics. The central event's outcome was influenced by a complex interplay of institutional factors, including the existing rules and regulations governing association football. In 1948, the Football League had only recently been reorganized, with increased authority granted to the Football Association. At that time, the sport's governance was heavily influenced by various stakeholders, particularly the British government, whose interests played a major role in shaping its decision-making process. A key factor in the awarding of the indirect free kick was the need for the game to adapt to the changing circumstances of post-war England. The country was still recovering from the devastation of World War II, and sports was seen as an important means of boosting morale and promoting national unity. The governing body's decision also reflected the influence of the Board of Trade, which had been involved in discussions around the future of football governance. Prominent figures like Reg Butler, the Football Association's secretary at the time, played a crucial role in shaping the debate surrounding the indirect free kick award. The controversy surrounding the indirect free kick led to a significant increase in scrutiny of the governing body's decision-making process. Critics argued that the awarding of the free kick had compromised the integrity of the game, while supporters claimed it was a necessary measure to promote fair play and sporting ethics. In response to these concerns, the Football Association established an independent review committee to examine the circumstances surrounding the indirect free kick award. The committee's report highlighted the complex interplay of institutional factors that had influenced the governing body's decision, including the need for the game to adapt to post-war England and the influence of external stakeholders, such as the British government and the Board of Trade. Reg Butler's role in shaping the debate surrounding the indirect free kick award was also scrutinized by the committee, which concluded that his influence had contributed to the governing body's decision. The fallout from the controversy led to calls for greater transparency and accountability within the governing body, with some critics arguing that the Football Association's decision-making process needed to be more robust and less influenced by external factors. The incident also highlighted the need for clearer rules and regulations governing association football, particularly in relation to indirect free kicks and other key aspects of the game. In 1950, the Football Association introduced new guidelines on the awarding of indirect free kicks, which aimed to reduce the scope for subjective interpretation and promote greater consistency in decision-making. The changes were widely seen as a response to the controversy surrounding the indirect free kick award, although some critics argued that they did not go far enough in addressing the underlying issues. The introduction of new guidelines on indirect free kicks led to a significant reduction in controversy surrounding the awarding of these penalties. However, the fallout from the incident continued to simmer beneath the surface, with many within the Football Association still reeling from the criticism and scrutiny that had been directed at them. The Independent Review Committee's report had highlighted the complex interplay of institutional factors that had influenced the governing body's decision-making process, and many saw this as a wake-up call for the organization to become more transparent and accountable. Critics argued that the Football Association's decision-making process was still too opaque, with too much influence being wielded by external stakeholders such as the British government and the Board of Trade. The controversy had also highlighted the need for clearer rules and regulations governing association football, particularly in relation to indirect free kicks and other key aspects of the game. The introduction of new guidelines on indirect free kicks was seen as a step in the right direction, but many critics felt that it did not go far enough in addressing the underlying issues. The Football Association's decision-making process continued to be criticized for being too influenced by external factors, with some calling for greater transparency and accountability within the governing body. The controversy had also led to calls for more robust rules and regulations governing the game, particularly in relation to indirect free kicks and other key aspects of the game. The Football Association faced significant financial strain in 1950 due to declining membership and revenue, prompting calls for reform of its decision-making process. The British government's sway over the Football Association remained a contentious topic, as critics suggested its involvement had sparked controversy over an indirect free kick ruling, and some questioned the Board of Trade's meddling in governance decisions. The introduction of new guidelines on indirect free kicks was seen as a response to the controversy, but it did not address the underlying issues of risk blindness and narrowing options within the Football Association. The organization's leaders were criticized for failing to anticipate the consequences of their decisions and for being too focused on short-term gains rather than long-term sustainability. The Football Association faced a severe crisis in 1950, beset by financial woes, public scrutiny, and internal dissent over the governing body's handling of an indirect free kick. Thanks for listening to Underwire History. Look forward to seeing you next time.